Hi, this is Melanie of Pardesi Reviews, and I'm here to do a review of the Malayalam film 19-1A, starring Nithya Menen and Vijay Sethupathi. If you're new to Pardesi Reviews, I do trailer reactions and film reviews of Indian cinema. I am a huge fan of Nithya Menen. She was in, she was in Ustad Hotel, the very first Malayalam film I ever saw. If you followed me for a long time, those of you who just watched my Malayalam film reviews may not know that I am a huge Vijay Sethupathi fan. So this was not his very first film, but I think this is only his second Malayalam film. So I found that quite interesting, and especially that he chose to do a film like this and play the kind of character that he did. Learning here that 19-1A, I am an ignorant American, is the part of the Indian Constitution that deals with freedom of speech. And that is the core of this film. I'm not spoiling anything because it happens in the first 5 minutes of the film. Vijay Sethupath's character is a writer. We see him at the beginning having chai and having a smoke, and then film goes to black, we hear a sound, and of course I assumed something had happened and he had died. Then we're having flashbacks. We're seeing Nithya Menen, who is a young woman living with her father, who's a widower, and she is running the copy shop, the Xerox shop that her father had originally run. And we see the routine, the mundane routine of her life. The unusual thing that happens is that Vijay Sethupath's character in a flashback walks into her shop, hands her a handwritten bound pack of papers and asks for her to copy it. And he says he'll be back later in the evening, it might be late. So we see that she waits and waits, and then he doesn't appear. So we have flashbacks back and forth between seeing the events of that day for Vijay Sethupathi, and then we see the aftermath effects of news reports. And when she sees the news reports on TV, she realizes who the person was who had come into her copy shop, why he didn't come back, and what it is that she is now in possession of, which is his last book. We learn in flashbacks that Indradjit plays his publisher, and they have an intense conversation in the past where Indradjit says, why are you writing this nonfiction, this political stuff? Why don't you just write fiction? And they have just this interesting conversation about writing and the impact of writing. And so meanwhile, we're having scenes of Nithya's just mundane life. And we learn that she has a best friend who is being forced into an arranged marriage. And so it is losing her freedom in that way. And what we're seeing is a lot of characters who are, my husband described it as, a lot of characters looking out into the middle distance. We're seeing what's happening it's like a very cerebral thing. We're seeing her intellectual awakening. Nithya Menen's character is not even given a name in the film. We're seeing her see a protest about trees and then suddenly look up and realizing, oh, wow, there's these old trees here. I'd never even noticed them before. And she reads the book that this writer had left with her. We see it slowly transform her. This is written and directed by a debut director, Indhu V, and I will tell you that I had some frustrations with the film. I talked to a friend who really loves this film. It was one of her top films of the year, and my frustrations were, I guess, we're from the point of view of Nithya Menen's character in that we don't really know that much about this writer. But when she's reading his work, I would have liked to have some voice over what he said. Now, I suppose we learned some of it at it's like the final climax, okay? But I had this frustration that I'm like, okay, I can see that she's being really affected by this, but I don't know what he said. and I also just had frustration that I don't know, there's just a lot unsaid and a lot assumed and a lot inferred. Now, I think that's in some ways to make it more universal. Like, we, the audience, can fill in what we think this rebellious writer would have written about. It's sort of fill in the blank, what you think he should have been so impassioned about, but they kind of, I don't know, it was left. And I think if you're very familiar with the political climate in India, you can infer a lot of things from, but I felt like, as an outsider, it was harder for me to understand what exactly this director and writer was trying to get across to me, and what exactly Nithya Menen's character was learning through this whole experience. So I see what the choice that Nithya Menen's character makes at the end. I admire the message of the film, and yet I'm not completely sold on the way that the story was told to me. And again, I'm an outsider, so someone in India or more familiar, like for instance, the Vijay Sethupathi character's name is Gauri, and that is a reference to a journalist that was killed. So that's something that I didn't know. But again, someone who is in the know in India would have immediately caught on to that, I guess. Anyway, kudos to everyone involved for making a film about this subject, because it's so important. I just had some frustrations with it. It's a very interior film. It's a very cerebral kind of a film. I mean, it's always good to have a film about a young woman's intellectual awakening and her change, but I just don't know if the way that it was shown was the best for me. All right, let me know if you've seen this film, which is playing on Hulu streaming in the United States. And let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. I'm sure there's so much that I missed of this film that just went over my head. But anyway, I admired the performances and I admired the message of the film. All right, follow me on Twitter at PardesiYT. Follow me on Instagram at Pardesi Reviews. And if you hit the bell here when you subscribe, you'll never miss another trailer reaction or film review.